What is up, YouTube fam? Robbie C here. We are back with another Marvel Snap video. For those of you who have been playing this game since global launch, we are a couple weeks in, but the major roadblock that lots of you are going to be asking, especially as we find ourselves at the end of the season, is quite simply, when should I move into the next pool? At this point, you're probably familiar with the collection system, which is how you acquire new cards. Now, these cards are broken into separate pools 1, 2, and 3 at the time of this video's release. I'd be willing to bet that the further we dive into the game, there will be more pools released so that pool 3 doesn't just grow into being this insanely large pool overall. Now, inside of each of these pools, although the cards are the same, the order that you unlock the cards can be drastically different. For instance, on my maxed out account that I've had before global launch, I unlocked Nova at collection level 126, whereas on my new account that I created on global launch, Nova was the last card that I unlocked in pool 1 at collection level 214. And if you're anything like me, one of the best features of a card game is unlocking new cards so that you unlock new combo potentials, new play potentials, and perhaps some of your favorite Marvel characters are not in pool 1, they're in the later on pools. Bringing us once again to the question of this video. Hey Mr. YouTube man, when am I supposed to move out of my current pool into the next one? So I want to give a couple warnings about what happens inside of the game when you jump from one pool to the next. The first is you need to understand that in any kind of card game, there are inherently good cards and bad cards. Now, the designers aren't intentionally making bad cards, but the reality of the game is that eventually there are going to be cards that are stronger than others, and because the pool systems are divided in random unlock, there is a chance that when you move into a new pool, that the cards that you unlock early on inside of that pool are inherently weaker cards. Your matchmaking system matches you against players based on your collection level, which means that the moment that you step into collection level 215, you are going to start facing pool 2 decks. Now, if your first few cards that you unlock inside of pool 2 are not so great or not as strong as the cards that other players might be unlocking early on in their pool 2 collection, you're going to be at a competitive disadvantage. I know, that's kind of lame to put it that way, but it's the reality of the world we find ourselves in. So because of that, I want to give a couple of moments that I think are a bad time to move up into a different pool. One of the biggest times that you're not going to want to progress into a new pool or jump into that next pool is near the end of the season, especially when you're not going to have a lot of time to progress your account forward and get those final games in. You can find the season pass in a multitude of places, but when you click on one of those, you're going to see a timer at the top of the season pass menu. This lets you know exactly how long you have left inside of the season pass. For those of you new to the game, you haven't experienced an end of the season moment yet. So what happens? First thing that's going to happen is that season pass experience is going to reset all the way back to 1 because we're going to get an entirely new season. I'm not smart enough, nor honestly do I care enough to scrape the files and find what the next season pass is going to be. But if I had to guess, based on the fact that the movie comes out November 12th and the fact that the new season is going to start on the evening of November 8th for those of us here in the States, I'd be willing to bet a lot of money that our next season is going to be shaped around Wakanda because a Black Panther card actually doesn't exist in the game right now. So not only is the season pass experience going to reset, but your current level on the ranked rewards track is also going to reset. A reset doesn't take you all the way back to 0, but rather it looks at where you are inside of the current ranked ladders and moves you back 30 levels or 3 tiers, however you want to describe that. These tiers include Diamond, Vibranium, Omega, Galactic. You're going to move back 3 tiers from the highest rank tier that you currently find yourself in. Let me say that one more time. It's whatever tier you currently find yourself in, not whichever one you passed. Passed simply means that you can only earn those rewards once. Wherever you currently find yourself in, that is where the reset will occur from. So that means that if you went on a tear and jumped into Vibranium and got all the way up to 74, but you've been messing around and gone on a bit of a loss streak lately, and you find yourself at a cool casual 69, then that means you are going to drop all the way not from 70 down to 40, but you're actually going to drop from 60 down to 30. I know it's incredibly inefficient, but if you find yourself on that teetering line around, say, a 70 cap or a 60 cap, and you're just above in that top tier, it's kind of worth it on the last day to maybe take a day off because there's going to be a lot of people playing for a lot of cubes trying to make that last push, and it can be an incredibly volatile day to try to gain some cubes. Unless, of course, you've pushed all the way to infinite, and in infinite, you might have already discovered that once you reach that infinite ranked, you actually can't drop back below 100. It's one of the biggest perks, if not the biggest perk, to reaching infinite every season. With that being my biggest reason that you would not want to jump, I have one other reason. That would be that you don't have enough upgrading currency to make the jump worth it. The place that you have the biggest competitive advantage is when you are at the top of the pool. That means currently, when you find yourself at collection level 214 or 474, you have acquired all of the cards for that pool, which means that while you're still being matched against people inside of that pool, there's not a single card they're going to pull out against you that you couldn't also pull out against them. So the game becomes technically competitively even at those points. Knowing that, and knowing that it's a random draw of what pool cards you're going to get when you head into the next pool, I highly suggest chilling at the top of a pool, staying right there till you hit that 5,000 credit limit. Something to note about your credits, and something I've talked about in another video, is that when you do the initial frame break, that is 25 credits for one collection level. That is the most efficient use of credits in the game. After that initial frame break, no matter how you spend your credits or what level of quality you're upgrading the card, it is always going to cost you 50 credit per level on the collection level. So that means that if you have no frame breaks and you have 5,000 credits, it's going to be roughly 100 collection level for those 5,000 credits that you spent. This means going from pool 1 to pool 2, you're going to get almost halfway through the pool before you even play your first game if you just go on that credit spending spree, which is going to be pretty awesome for making sure that you are not at a competitive disadvantage. Pool 3 gets a little dicier because instead of guaranteed cards that you're unlocking along the collection level, you get introduced to collector's caches. These caches have a 25% chance to have a card inside of them, and then at 1,000 collection level, you start finding collector's reserves, which only have a 20% chance to have a new base card inside of them. But I stand by that until you have enough resources to make that launch, it's usually not worth making the jump because you're just going to find yourself frustrated with not having the right cards to compete with the people you're playing against. With those being said of moments that you shouldn't make the jump, when do I believe you should make the jump? And I think there are 3 things to keep in mind when you make the jump, especially from pool 1 to pool 2. The first is honestly super basic, and it's when you get bored. I was streaming this game before global launch. A lot of people said that they were worried they were going to get overwhelmed by how many cards there were in the game. And I described it to them in this way. If I were to take a surfing lesson, I wouldn't start by going into the water. I would spend time on the beach on my surfboard trying to figure out how it felt to be on the board. This is what Pool 1 is supposed to do. There's a reason there's 46 cards inside of Pool 1 for you to get to know and to learn those strategies. But not only are you learning the 46 cards of Pool 1, you're spending a lot of your time inside of Pool 1 learning the locations as well. Not only that, but inside of your games, there's really only 3 prominent decks that you're going to come across. The first is going to be the Odin on reveal deck, where people are trying to get White Tiger to pop, Spider Woman, or Ironheart. You guys have seen Odin multiple times. You know when it's coming, and you know it's about to hurt. So grab your Cosmo, get ready to ruin people's days. The other common things you're going to see is some form of an ongoing deck where people are throwing down Onslaught on the last turn. This can be a zoo deck with a bunch of 1-cost cards, or it can be a deck running like a Claw and Devil Dino and Iron Man. The more that you play this, especially when you're seeing everyone play with the same cards over and over again, it can make the game feel a little stale, and you can ask yourself, how have people like Molt and TLSG put so many hours into this game, because it's getting kind of boring. And I totally get that. The more games that you're grinding out, it can become incredibly frustrating and annoying seeing the same cards over and over again. And if you find yourself there, the game does become a bit more refreshing when you move into Pool 2. So if you want to have some more fun, make the jump and start playing with some more cards and seeing some more combinations that come out. But heed the warnings that I mentioned earlier on in this video. The second reason that I think you should make the jump is when you have learned the lesson or the strategies that you were supposed to learn inside of Pool 1 and you're ready to expand your game knowledge. I glossed over it earlier, but I think in Pool 1, you are simply learning about some keywords such as ongoing and on-reveal effects, and you are also learning sort of how the strategy of the game works. When are you spreading yourself too thin? When are you too hyper-focused on a single base, and you may be crushing that base, but you're giving up the others for free? Most of Pool 1 is spent learning the locations and learning how you can get power onto the board efficiently, and learn the ramp of a deck and how you can scale up your play throughout the game so that you are scoring as effectively as possible. In Pool 1, although there are cards that can affect the other player's deck, such as a Cable or a Mantis, there are actually only 7 cards out of the 46 that have an actual impact on your opponent's side of the board. These can include cards like Electra, that destroys a card on the other side of the board, Armor, that changes somewhat the location itself, making cards not be able to destroy, Scarlet Witch can change the location, and Professor X can lock it down for you. Yes, you have Guardians like Gamora who can make predictions, but it's really you versus them in terms of who is using the locations to maximize their power output that they can put down on the board. However, once you dive into Pool 2, you start coming across some cards that can have a tremendous impact on your side of the board. We gain 2 more cards that have the ability to change the locations themselves, such as Storm, who changes a location into flooding, which adds immediate urgency to players, and Rhino, who can look at a location that you're having a great time with and immediately turn it into ruin. And of course, for all of you terrible people out there who love to ruin your opponent's days, I can be one of those people sometimes too. We meet our first goblin, the Hobgoblin, who literally jumps to your opponent's side of the board and basically can lose a base for them on his own. So not only in Pool 2 do I have to worry about my own side of the board, but my opponent has more of an ability to influence my side of the board, just as I gain the ability to influence their side of the board as well. Trust me when I say that the game gets a whole lot spicier in Pool 2. Now, Pool 3 takes all of these features and exaggerates them even more, because not only does Pool 2 introduce you to the ability to influence your opponent's side of the board, but we really get insight into all of the different archetypes that exist within the game. Remember how in Pool 1 I talked about that there was really only a couple of strong decks like Ongoing and On Reveal? Well, when you head into Pool 2, you start to come across Move decks. Move is one of the most fun archetypes to play inside of the game, and if you're looking for an instant headache as you're trying to do all of the maths and geometry inside of your head, Move can be an excellent addition for you. You also get introduced to one of my favorite archetypes, which is the Discard archetype. Pool 2, you get introduced to Swarm. When discarded from your hand, he instantly adds 2 copies to your hand that cost a whopping 0. So you can flood the board with Swarm as you discard him from your hand over and over again. You also get introduced to more destruction cards like Captain America's best bud, Bucky Barnes, who turns into the Winter Soldier. The game evolves into so much more than just Odin, White Tiger, Onslaught, and Iron Man, and it is a breath of fresh air as you head into these new pools. Like I said, Pool 3 just takes all of these tropes and archetypes and makes them even bigger and better, and the game gets so exciting. When you move into Pool 2, obviously there are more strategies that you need to be aware of, and you need to be looking for these plays, which gives me the third and final reason that I think you should move into the next pool, and that is when you are cleverly predicting your opponent's plays on a regular basis. Because there are only a few decks that are actually viable early on in the game, especially in Pool 1, often it can come down to not who is technically the better player, but who just happened to draw their win conditions and their cards better during that round. When you make the jump into the next pool, there are going to be a lot more decks that you come across, which means that the outplay potential becomes even higher as you start identifying those strategies. You can even run decks that are simply designed to just stop people's strategy in their place. Mirror matchups can be super frustrating, and I'm not saying that they're going to go away as you progress your way through the pools, but the higher up you go in the collection level and the deeper you go into Pool 2 and Pool 3, you're going to see so much more variance in what decks you're facing, as well as what decks you can play. You can find out if a certain archetype works for you and your playstyle better than others. For me personally, I am pretty trash at playing destruction decks, but I can play a discard deck with the best of them. Others, however, get incredibly frustrated with discard and wonder how you're ever supposed to lean into the randomness of it. You just have to find your playstyle, and when you move into Pool 2, you'll find those a lot more available. But I've rambled quite a bit, and this video has gone long enough as it is you guys want to get back in there and start snapping and start getting some cubes, especially with the end of the season just around the corner. So let me know in the comments below, was this helpful? Was this not helpful? What kind of strategies and things do you want to see in future videos for me to go over? I am happy to become a resource to help you guys out. Obviously, I don't know everything about the game. I'm not Ben, and I am by no means the smartest person to play this game. But I care about you guys. I want to make sure that you're having a blast while you're out there, snapping all over your opponents, and we are just crushing them and taking cube after cube after cube. With all that said, thanks for stopping by. Thanks for checking out the channel. Come hang out with us on a live stream. We stream on Mondays and Fridays. You're going to want to come hang out and have a good time and see some of these strategies put into action. But in the meantime, I hope you have an amazing week and make it fantastic for someone else too. But for now, I'm going to leave you with the snap and the wombo combo.